Hello and welcome. We are here with famous mystic and spiritual author, Mr. Michael Rhodes, is a very popular spiritual author, spiritual teacher, mystic, originally from England, who immigrated to Australia to become a dairy farmer, involved in organic farming and established an intentional community. And from there, he began to explore an incredible, magical, metaphysical talent of his, which is traveling in his light body. From that metaphysical travel, which is, I guess, similar to astral travel, he began to experience all these different levels of consciousness, all these different levels of reality, with the guidance of one of his primary nature deity guides, Pan, who I have had affinity with in the past. And from those incredible metaphysical adventures, he has written many beautiful metaphysical spiritual books, some of them Journey into Nature, Journey into Oneness, Getting There, The Magical Formula, Through the Eyes of Love, all of which he documents his firsthand account of traveling out of his light body to experience these incredible different dimensions of reality, different dimensions of oneness and altered states of consciousness, showing that there is what he calls this metaphysical reality that overlaps on so many multi-dimensional levels over this physical reality, a true testament that we are more than just what we see and feel physically. I cannot tell you what an incredible honor it is today. If I may, Michael, share with you my story with your books. It was in the early 2000s, and I happened upon your book in the Barnes & Noble bookstore on Union Square. And there I saw Journey into Oneness. Journey into Nature wasn't there, but I don't think that was a coincidence, because oneness, that just popped out of me, because oneness was just a primary intuitive word that just resonated with me. And I started reading it in the bookstore, and I'm like, wow, I have to buy this. So I went home and I read it and finished it all into the wee hours of the morning. And I was hooked. And then I read Journey into Nature, which of course was also incredible. And then I continued reading other books of yours throughout the years. And when I inhale these books, I know this, as I am reading these incredible stories of your metaphysical journeys, what I began to experience is not just loving the language and loving all the stories and being inspired by those spiritual stories, but I am feeling it on such an intuitive level, like on a soul memory, like these dimensions, these realities. I am thinking, I'm going, this feels familiar. I'm not sure why, but it all feels so familiar.
You'll be surprised how many people have said the same, that it touches buttons that ignites in them old, very deep soul memories.
Yes, because I do believe that Earth is not my original home. I do believe this, but I've spent many lifetimes here accumulating hopefully a lot of knowledge and wisdom of soul memory in order for me to be a healer myself. So welcome, Michael. It is an honor for you to be here.
Wow, thank you. That's quite an introduction. I feel a bit more than I probably am. But you know, when you resonated with what I wrote, it's interesting to realize that you have an experience in your, I have an experience. I write it from the heart. It goes through into print. It goes through the publishing process. And yet the energy stays with those words. So people who read from the heart can resonate with exactly that energy and are carried on the journey. I've literally had hundreds of people say to me, almost, I hope you don't mind, but I was journeying with you. And I couldn't get a greater compliment than that. So thank you for your lovely introduction and the words you sent. That's you're very kind.
Thank you. And for some, it's not just journeying with them. I think it's sort of like remembering
When you realize that all time occupies the same moment, you are re-remembering.
I guess my first question is this incredible talent of journeying in your light body. I mean, is that something that people can learn how to do? And how is that different from like astral travel?
Yes, people can learn to do it. The only caution is you have to get beyond your own fears. Mm-hmm. And fear is very real in humanity. It's an interesting one because fear itself is a complete illusion, and yet it determines the life of most of humanity. You know, false evidence appearing real, FEAR, and it is so false. And yet it's the primary factor that directs most people. So if you do astral travel or metaphysical travel with fear, it's not a good idea. So the difference is, I came across astral travel probably in my 20s, and I practiced it and did it quite easily. Astral travel is body asleep. Instead of your consciousness sleeping with it, you'll deliberately send your consciousness with the astral body. Because every night when we sleep, we go into 5 cycles that dip down. So every hour and a half, we go down and come up, down and come up. So 5 cycles, hour and a half is about 8 hours sleep. And your astral body has to leave the body. It absolutely has to, because the truth is we're astral beings. We think we're physical human, but in fact, we're astral beings. And the human is just like, well, if you put it this way, if you were to take a 24-hour clock, how long do we spend being metaphysical, shall we say, in 100 incarnations? How long are we physical in physical bodies? It would be like 3 or 4 minutes. The rest of that 24 hours we're metaphysical. Yet we still see ourselves as physical beings, which is the biggest illusion we have going. It all began when I was a boy at school. I was a right-brain kid in a very left-brain school. And quite honestly, this intellectual stuff they kept talking, it's like I'm thinking, what are they talking about? And so I got so bored with it, I started playing mind games. And what I did was I learned to shrink the teacher. So in my imagination, I shrunk the teacher smaller and smaller, and their voice got smaller and smaller also. And I can remember being quite astonished when I couldn't understand how other kids could see the teacher, and I'd shrunk him down to about Tom Thumb. He was about the size of my thumb. You know, when I saw the movie years ago, Honey, I Shrunk the Teacher or the bedsitter or somebody, or Shrunk the Kids, I laughed. I thought, boy, I was there a long while before you were. Anyway, I shrunk the teacher, and so I had the idea he couldn't see me because I could only just see him or her. And then I would that was exciting. I couldn't see him or hear him. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. So then I began to experiment by imagining myself outside. So I was facing a window and I would imagine myself going out through the window and down into the playground. So this was good. There was nobody else down there except me. This went on for quite a while. Of course, it didn't do my grades much good. I was a dunce in the class the whole time, which is now I look back as quite an honor. But I was in the playground one day and I saw under a shrub a half-empty milk bottle, because we used to have school milk, as it were, in those days. And so this was somebody didn't like it and put it under the shrub. And so I thought, Anyway, when we had class break, I went down, and to my utter astonishment, there was the bottle, half or third of a bottle of milk under that shrub. And that really shocked me. And I tried to talk to my father about it. And he said, whatever are you talking about? And I realized he didn't know. And so I experimented with this quite a way, but eventually I left school at 14. And then years later, I began to look back on this and I realized that it didn't frighten me because I thought I was daydreaming. So I would just put it in the daydreaming box and it didn't bother me. And then I began to experiment, and I realized then, well, I came across astral travel, and it occurred to me, if you can travel with your body asleep, then obviously you can do it with your body awake. It's just another skill to learn. And so I would sit and relax the body and let go of my sense of self in the same way that I did when I was a kid in the classroom. And I would imagine myself moving away. Well, gradually I got pretty proficient at it. And then I began to find I was moving into other realities. And for a while, I thought, definitely, I had a number of years, I thought I was going insane. But I thought, by God, if this is insane, other people should go with me. But I never did really understand what was going on. And so one of my great blessings was I never needed to understand my spiritual journey. Being on it was enough. I didn't need to understand it. Now, 84% of the world is left brain dominant. And so, of course, we both of us have a lot of friends who are left brain dominant. And they'd say to me, explain this, because some of them on their spiritual, I said, I can't, I don't understand any of it. And they said, how can you do what you don't understand? I said, well, I don't understand that either. But I still continued on. And then you reach a point where you know. And that so far transcends, today they call it mystical cognition. I called it direct knowing. And that is so far transcends understanding that it's ridiculous. That's how it all started.
That definitely makes me think of times in which I think I may have done some astral travel during sleep, but I also know there are times, I call it half sleep, where I swear to God, I wake up from sleep and it's like, I thought I was having a conversation with someone. That makes me think that, okay, there is so much influence and guidance and inspiration and implanting and that is going on beyond our recognition of things. That's what came up for my experience in these half sleep experiences. If you, anything that you wish to add to that?
The problem is with humanity, we've got locked in on a lot of concepts that are so false it's ridiculous. One concept is that love is an emotion, and it isn't, and never has been. And another one is that we're human beings and that we're physical, three-dimensional. And in fact, our physical body is three-dimensional, but thought, imagination, intuition, emotions, insight, all that, inspiration is all fourth-dimensional, it's all metaphysical. And we're completely metaphysical beings, and we're so lost from that, and such a stupid game. I so often hear a celebrity say, well, you only live once. And I say to myself, yeah, you're right, but you have no idea how long that lasts. In other words, we exchange a lot of bodies, but that one life is eternal. And if we lived with that knowledge, wow, wouldn't things be different?
You said something very timely, because you have said in your books and in your interviews that, of course, love is not an emotion. It is a powerful, spiritual, divine, creative force. It definitely ups the ante as to truly understand the wisdom of that creative force was. As a healer who has clients who is healing people on a regular basis, probably one of the biggest obstacles to understanding this creative force of love is trauma. There is, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical trauma, family trauma, ancestral trauma, societal and cultural trauma. So, so many people feel like trying to get to understand that love is like trying to will themselves through a very thick brick wall. How do we get past that and heal that, to transcend that?
My whole life was made up of trauma and drama. When I emigrated to Australia first, I did a good number on it, and I went through a lot of physical pain, emotional and mental pain. But I'm in a place now where I look back on it and I think, why? Why do I do that? Let's put it this way. God has no opposite, but it has opposition. Love, the power of creation, has no opposite. Fear doesn't exist, so it's not an opposite, but it has opposition. And so we're the opposition always. And why are we the opposition? Because we're locked into a complete and total belief of separation. You know, we now have this linking us up, Zoom, from New York here to Queensland in Australia, and we look on ourselves as separate. But we nevertheless have the ability to sit down telepathically and have exactly the same communication, the same conversation. But we chose to go the electronic path. And so we bypass telepathy because we're frightened of our own thoughts and we wouldn't want to share them with other people. I'm familiar with telepathy because most beings I'm with are telepathic, and they often ask me, why do I broadcast? And I say, well, I never learned to put it on a single band because there was no single person ever willing to listen. And so we have a fear, whereas in fact, telepathy is more private than two people talking to each other physically. Telepathy could be more private than that because you don't intrude on each other's thoughts at all, because it comes to you absolutely clean. Many beings don't have a name because they have an energy signature. And why would they have a name? Because their signature announces them. I always ask them for a name because I can't call them energy signature. And so we're stuck in this three and four-dimensional reality. So we're really and truly fourth-dimensional beings living a three-dimensional reality because we believe we're physical bodies. We're not. And so tell me, how can you do that without trauma, drama, pain, suffering, sickness, the whole lot? Once you bypass all that, once you begin to perceive truth and live truth, then, for instance, a lot of people don't believe this statement. I have forgotten what worry feels like. I've forgotten what anxiety feels like. I've forgotten what stress feels like. I've forgotten what anger feels like, and self-criticism and guilt and blame. I just don't do them, not because I have to use my will. They just are no longer free agents in this state of consciousness, the consciousness I am. The other day, I dropped a glass thing and it shattered everywhere. And I heard myself say, oh dear. And I thought, wow, that's a mild expletive. I can remember when I would have said something a bit stronger because I'd got to pick up all the bits of glass. And yet it had no impact. It was just, it happened. I watched a program last night of all the people walking through a medical research hospital and all the medical science. And I thought, why is it that we're so clever, that we're so stupid? You know, every illness, human illness, and it's considered them over 40,000, whereas like a rabbit might have 10. So we're a little bit more creative than a rabbit. Every human sickness and illness we've created. It comes out of discord in the human consciousness. That discord is always going to be there while we live a lie in the illusion, while we have no idea of who we are, why we're here, what we're doing, where we're going. And even people talk about my soul like it's their handbag. You know, I am a soul with a body. I am a soul. I can't say my soul. It's like my me. You know, I am the soul, and I always speak from being a soul, the soul I am. But most people, fairly aware in all this, still talk about my soul, and so they created separation. There's something called a personality with a soul, and the personality is just a little game we play, and as you develop, it drops further and further away from you. But if all that put aside, I couldn't help thinking, if they were only to move towards metaphysics and meta-science and realize that every human sickness came out of the consciousness, and if you move into the consciousness, create not a healing, create harmony, because like dis-ease means out of harmony. And so if you create harmony in a person's consciousness, They can't have a sickness. It's not possible, because sickness is a lower frequency, whereas love is a higher frequency. But we do everything technically, mechanically, and electronically, and that's where we're locked in. And in my metaphysical traveling, I have found the lower the consciousness, the higher the technology. The higher the consciousness, they do everything with mind. They do it all with energy. The higher the consciousness, you don't see their technology. Okay, you might see a spaceship or something like that, but you don't see the technology. I was with one group and they said, well, we'll go there. One guy touched something, seemed to be a belt on his waist, and we're there. And I said, hang on, how did that happen? How could we be there? We were X place a moment ago, now we're there. He said, well, we just took the space away between. I said, okay, we'll pass on that because that doesn't make sense. So they simply took the space away between us, therefore we didn't have to move. And that's what I call high tech, and there's nothing to see.
I'm resonating with this wonderfully because the vortex healing transmissions and the Merlin lineage it creates powerful awakening within one's being. Even though I still deal with certain levels of fear and unresolved issues, what I know is that I don't feel lonely anymore. And that's a wonderful acknowledgement. It's just like the oneness that is all is just acknowledged in my being, that there's no need to be lonely because there is no separation. It's just a wonderful intuitive note.
When you say you feel fear, Simon, you have to create it in your imagination to feel it. And so we create it subconsciously. Now, I know of spiritual teachers who praise up the subconscious, and we should learn to do more with it. I'm the complete opposite. I say we should learn to be more conscious and make conscious choices. And if you're fully conscious, you don't choose fear, you choose love. And when you don't choose fear, fear gets used to not being chosen. And so what should be a frightening incident or situation, there's no fear in it.
What I know is that as I grow in frequency, the light grows in frequency. And the natural order of the raising of that frequency is it's like the sun. The sun casts itself on something to illuminate it. The sun casts itself on it to diminish the shadow. So that's kind of like how it is as that light continues, that it immediately goes to those places and reveals them. That is healing, but that is also simply things coming into harmony. I guess the revealing of shadow is just the revealing of the unconscious, which of course will be awakened anyway, which is very beautiful.
One of the things I teach most insistently is in every moment of your life, you are creating the content and direction of every moment of your life. And that means there's not a micro moment when you're not creating. We can't stop creating. We're creators. We're here on this planet to learn the principles of creation. That's why we're here. Now, you can create fear. What you're talking about, light, is lovely. And it's a great metaphor, and I get it. But the point is, you're the creator. So what you need to realize is you are humanity. You are the world. And if we take it the next step, you are the universe. Now, people say, okay, they get a concept. You're the universe experiencing itself in a single person to know what that is. For me, that's a reality. I'm aware that I am the universe. And sometimes I play at being a lot of the moment I'm playing at being a particular thing called Michael. And I'm having fun with that. But it's like we have beliefs. We believe in aging. Now, aging doesn't make sense. Just because we see things around us getting older, that's because we live in the world of separation. You and I, we are energy, nothing else. And that energy is consciousness. Now, I ask you, does energy ever age? Of course it doesn't. And so if you relate to yourself as pure energy, then you slow down aging. I'm 85 and people say, how come you look so young and you've got so much energy? And I say, well, why shouldn't I have? But you're in your mid-80s. Well, what's that got to do with it? The only age I've got is what I carried for so many years while I believed that you got older. I no longer believe you get older. I do think there is a limit to how far the physical body wants or needs to go. But we are ageless and immortal and eternal. You know, I actually live that I am a magnificent, metaphysical, multidimensional, immortal, eternal being of love, the power of creation, and light, the illumination of eternity. That is the truth of every human being. If we lived that, we'd be in sixth dimension by now as a species, but we're still lost in the mud and the trauma and the drama of separation. And that's where all pain and sickness comes from. And that's why, you know, I admire those people who can work with that, but if they believe in it, they're working with an illusion, that they're an illusion working with an illusion. And that doesn't mean they shouldn't do what they do. There's no criticism implied here. But someday it's time we waked up, and this whole, what we're going through now, you know, we can look and blame the cabal and all those sort of things, but this is our creation. This is our creation. And it probably goes back well over 1 million years. I mean, the fact they say we've been here 200,000 years, well, yeah, go back and tell them at school that complete rubbish. We've been around millions of years, and we're on other planets, and we're all over the place. And so history is just a story. And it's not even his or her story. It's a story.
So you mean like we've been here millions of years in terms of who we are as souls, or in terms of humanity?
As souls, we go back a long, long way. A community is something that is a new way of looking at a group of people. Like, for instance, originally a village was a design to bring a group of people together so each could support the other. And it was a wonderful way to grow. Then the village grew into a town, and not everybody wanted to support everybody. Some wanted a profit at the expense of others. And then it grew into a city where the whole city is based in competition rather than cooperation. So a city holds the greatest potential for spiritual growth there is, even today, as crazy as they are, simply because if you go into a monastery to learn saintliness and peace, all you will ever do is emulate it. But if you go into conflict, if you go into a battlefield and find peace within that, you have it forever. And New York is a battlefield. And so peace, you know, serenity is not shelter from the storm, it's peace within it. And beyond being human, which is what we're all about, beyond being the limited human that we've settled for. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to share a little bit of my wisdom, maybe, with other people. And I think you're a beautiful person, Simon. Your energy comes across in spades, and it's lovely.
Thank you so much.